Should I cut or should I bulk? It's a question most rugby players will ask when they're looking to step up their performances on the pitch, but most find themselves stuck in a limbo. Some weeks they're in team mass moves mass, they're trying to eat every single calorie in sight to add precious kilos to their PBs. Then other weeks they're struggling to get past 20 minutes, they're slow off the mark and they don't dominate the collisions like they used to. And this leads to a vicious yo-yo cycle, and whatever decision they seem to make, it never seems to leave a lasting impact on the pitch. Well, today we are going to break that cycle because I'm going to be running you through our quadrant system that we use with the players that step inside the strength solution to identify exactly what their next moves needs to be from a body composition standpoint. So we're going to be giving you the tools to answer the question, should I cut or bulk, with one goal in mind, to make you the best rugby player yet. Let's get into it. If you're new around here, I'm Joel and I've been in the sport of rugby for over a decade and I run the Strength Solution, a coaching program designed to help rugby players have their best season yet. And with the athletes that we've had stepping foot through the doors, I have seen some of the best and worst decisions when it comes to body composition, and I've made half of them myself. I've seen players chase the wrong body composition goal and waste seasons, but then I've also seen athletes on the brink of thinking their best days were done, make a few changes to their nutrition, optimize their body composition, and have the best season yet. And since working with over 300 athletes and seeing the positive impact that optimizing body composition can have, I believe this should be a goal for everyone, because body composition has a direct relation on the core four. This is your strength, speed, power, conditioning, and they are the 4 key elements that you need to master as a rugby player if you want to become a physically dominant athlete. First things first, let's explore the impact of body composition on strength, because this is one mistake that I made one too many times in my career that I care to admit, and that is that yes, a few extra kilos of body fat may help you lift some more in the gym. I was putting out some big numbers. I had a big squat, I had a big bench press, but after doing body fats and sitting at roughly 30% body fat, the coaches chucked me into Fat Club. I had carbs scraped off my plate because while yes, I was lifting big numbers, carrying around that extra body fat was killing my relative strength and my relative power. And these are the numbers that most pro clubs will track because they have the biggest impact on performance. And that is why 120 kilos at the pro level looks and performs completely different to 120 kilos at the grassroots level, because one is built for performance, the other one is built around body weight. When it comes to speed and power, the science is clear. Every kilo of body fat that you are carrying will slow you down. However, every kilo of muscle mass that you may add could positively impact your momentum if you do it right. And we know that momentum is one of the greatest predictors of collision success in rugby union. Let's use Lewis Reese as an example for this to hit this home, because since returning from the NFL, apparently he's put on 10 kilos, which reportedly, again, has shaved off 1.2 mile an hour off his top speed. But the 10 kilos that he's gained has obviously been good tissue because he's managed to improve his momentum throughout this time by roughly 50, which may mean coming into collisions, he can dominate the gain line a little bit more. And it's a similar story for conditioning as well. We know that extra kilos of body fat may reduce VO2 max and make a full 80-minute game harder, but if it allows you to bring more oomph into contact and repeatedly dominate people for maybe 60 minutes, is it worth the trade-off? And this is where most players get confused, because this isn't a one-size-fits-all approach, and all you need to do is look at pro rugby to understand this. There are many different players from various different shapes and sizes being successful. Big Ben versus Max Laheath. You've then got Nemani Nadolo, who was very, very good. But then you've also got Cheslin Colby, which is on the other end of the spectrum. And Ellis Genge, coming into this Lions tour, spoke about how he wanted to add more body weight because that was the game that they were looking to play. So you will realize that we need to take an individualized approach, and it's why at the Strength Solution we coach the person, not the process. But good news for you, after doing this for 6 years, we have created a framework that will take all the guesswork away, so you just have a clear-cut answer today. So this leads us on nicely. What do you need to do? Well, firstly, you need to understand that there's going to be 2 levers that we need to pull throughout this. We've got body fat, we've got muscle mass. Now, most people opt straight for the body fat percentage, but Often, the biggest differentiator between the elite and the sub-elite is actually muscle mass. A 2020 systematic review confirmed this, where it looked at rugby players playing across the sub-elite and elite level, and they actually found that the differences in body fat between the two were often very small and maybe negligible, but elite players always carried more muscle mass. And the IOC confirmed this, where muscle mass was one of the greatest performance predictors in a variety of different sports. The way that I see it, fat drags you down, muscle mass propels you forward. So if you're sat here thinking, do I need to drop body fat? Do I need to improve muscle mass? This is where the quadrant system comes in, and we will bucket athletes into 4 key areas that will give you your next move depending on your current situation. Let's get into it. So the quadrant system works on 2 key things. You've got muscle mass and you've got body fat. Now, this means that athletes can fall into one of 4 quadrants. You've got high muscle mass, high body fat. You've got low muscle mass, high body fat. You've got low muscle mass, low body fat. And you've got high muscle mass, low body fat. So now we've built out the 4 quadrants, you need to understand exactly where you sit on these quadrants. And this is where you're going to need to give yourself an honest, hard reflection. Ask yourself, where do I sit? And normally that gut reaction that you've got is probably where you're going to be placed. But if you're struggling to place yourself here, this is why all professional clubs will use body fat testing. They will get an idea of where they're at. They may use calipers, they may use some DEXA scans, they may use bioelectrical impedance. There's a multitude of different ways that you can use to track your body fat, but the big thing that they're going to be looking at is whatever nutrition intervention that they choose, they can get a reliable, repeatable snapshot of their progress throughout this, because that is going to be the biggest thing, is understanding how we're going to move the needle week to week and making sure that the changes that we're doing are eliciting the adaptation that we want. And then once you've placed yourself in the quadrant, you just need to ask yourself, what do I need to do from here? And these are the recommendations that we've got after working with 300 athletes on what the best case of action is. If you're in that high muscle, high fat, the likelihood is dropping some fat is going to have some positive improvements in your performance. You're going to find conditioning easier. Your relative strength and power numbers will go up. You will feel faster off the mark, and normally you will be a dangerous player off the back of this. Then we've got the next group, low muscle, high fat. And you lot have a harder decision to make, in all honesty, because it can go one of 2 ways. You can cut or you can bulk. And for us, we normally determine this on the time of the season. We've had athletes fit into both camps, but the ones in the off season, here we would normally push into a bit of a cut. We want to try and reduce that body fat percentage because there's no pressure to perform on the weekends. Where you may need a little bit of extra body fat because you don't have the muscle to tolerate those collisions, in the off season, you don't have to worry about those collisions, which means you can pull that body fat off rather rapidly and then switch the focus into that bulk where you're going to try and gain some good quality tissue. And the thing with cutting, it is a much faster process than bulking. You can roughly lose at 4 times the speed than you can gain. So that would be our priority in the off season, because then that just allows us a bigger window of opportunity to be able to push without accruing very, very high body fat percentages. And I think for those in season, bulk/maintain is where I would go. I think that maintenance approach may be very good if you are a relatively untrained beginner, because we know that you can gain muscle mass while dropping body fat in that camp. But if you're that trained individual, I would say the bulk side of things is probably going to be the best case for you, especially if you are playing 80 minutes week in, week out. When it comes to the low muscle, low fat, very, very simple. You want to bulk and you want to focus on gaining as much good quality tissue as possible. Being in that low body fat percentage normally means that you can push and extend your bulk for a prolonged period of time, which means you have more fuel availability. You can consistently drive more training energy and training resources because you have that fuel coming in, and you are going to see significant improvements in muscle growth over this period of time. This is the golden zone for us, and if you can maximize this, you will become a completely unrecognizable player. And then finally, we got the high muscle, low fat group. I would say this is a bulking opportunity once again. This is going to be an opportunity for us to gain even more good quality tissue. And sometimes, depending on what positional group that you're in, you may actually find that higher body fat percentages can help withstand those collisions like I spoke about. And it may mean that you just have a little bit more longevity week to week throughout the season, while also having a very high performance focus, because you're able to grow and build some good quality tissue alongside recovering from the games of the weekend. So that is the 4-quadrant system, and that is going to answer the questions of what you need to do with your nutrition when it comes to what body composition type that you fall under to improve your performances on the pitch. But as you're making those changes, there are going to be some key markers that we need to look at outside of that are going to influence your performances on the pitch too. The first being momentum. Momentum is going to be your weight times speed, and it is one of the greatest predictors of gain line success. So you want to be routinely checking where your speed is at, comparing that to your body weight, and tracking that score to make sure that there's no drastic dips as you're going through your journey. The second thing is your power to weight ratio. You're going to do a routine CMJ, and you're going to compare that against your body weight, and you're going to track that number throughout the season. The next one is your relative strength. You're going to take a 1RM or an estimated 1RM, divide that by your body weight to make sure that we're not having drastic drops in strength as we're losing weight. And the next thing that you're going to look at is your conditioning. We're going to routinely revisit your mass score throughout this to make sure that you can hold and do all these things above for the 80-minute game. The reason why we need to track these numbers is the scoreboard doesn't care what you weigh. It doesn't care about your body fat percentage. And all your coach cares about is you can dominate collisions and do that for 80 minutes. And these are going to be the metrics that allow us to accurately assess, are we still able to do that as we're trying to make changes to our body composition to bring about an improved performance. And the beauty about making body composition changes, you are never done. There will never be a quote-unquote optimal body composition. It can always get better with the long-term goal of improving as much muscle mass as we got and reducing the amount of body fat. And this will take years. And this is how it plays out over the season. Depending on your start point, you're either going to cut or you're going to bulk. But the goal is to do this as long as you can before hitting the shit zone. We have one of these on either side. There's one where body fat percentage is going to be too high. This is the top one. This is going to be where you notice conditioning scores tank. Your power to weight ratio tanks. Momentum tanks. You don't have the ability to do what you need to do for the 80 minutes. And then there's also going to be the shit zone where you get too lean, where you look good, you feel like shit. You have a poor performance, energy's always low, you can't seem to recover from games, you're getting bumped off in tackles, and ultimately you're just kind of becoming a bodybuilder. And the goal is to always go about those little seasons and cycles, and every single time you complete a successful cut or bulk, your ceiling gets raised as well as your floor. Which means then that the next time you cut, you don't need to go as low because you have more muscle mass. And it means you get to go a little bit higher because you also have more muscle mass. And you rinse and repeat that process with the long-term goal of becoming as big and as shredded as possible within the confines of your sport to allow you to do the job to the best of your ability. So that right there is the action plan and the question of whether you need to cut or bulk. Step 1, you need to identify which quadrant that you sit in. Step 2, you need to apply a nutrition intervention. And then step 3, you need to track your performance metrics to avoid the shit zone. And then you need to go through seasons and cycles of cutting and bulking, much like James did. James stepped into the strength solution 4 years ago with the category of high body fat percentage, low muscle mass. He was in the off season, we stripped him back, we got him leaner than he ever has been, we then bulked him back up to a point heavier than where he first started, leaner. We then cut back down to a point where we didn't need to go as low, but still got lean. And then we've repeated that cycle, and he's now sitting heavier than he was when he first signed up to the program, with around 6 kilo more muscle mass, and he's stepped up 4 divisions with his rugby and is playing some of its best yet. The proof is in the pudding. So as you can see from James's journey, getting this right can completely transform your performances as a rugby player. You get to walk off that pitch week in, week out, knowing you brought your very best self. But only if you do it right. Having the answer to the question, should I cut or bulk, is one thing. Doing it right is the other. And if you're in the camp of not sure how to cut properly for your performance, watch this video where I detail the lessons that I've learned from dropping 40 kilos of body fat while maintaining my performance, because that is going to be the secret sauce that allows you to compete at your highest standard, even when dieting.